What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. Today it's the Game Week 17 preview. So because of the quick turnaround time last week, I didn't do a Game Week preview, but there's a lot to talk about, as you'd imagine, with all the postponements, people looking ahead to Game Week 19, looking for replacements for maybe Charlie Taylor and stuff like that. So I'm going to fit it all in to this video ahead of the Game Week 17 deadline. Obviously, there might be further news that comes out. If there is, we'll cover that on streams and stuff like that. So if you're enjoying the preview series, please do hit that like button, hit subscribe if you're new around here. Let's jump into the first topic. Okay, so I think we have to start by talking about the postponements that have happened for Game Week 16, and there might still happen, and whether there's going to be more, how it should affect our planning and stuff like that. So there's a lot to kind of digest and process and things like this. So first of all, Man City versus Everton got postponed, right? This season is like last season, right? Last season was weird, right? For most of the time it was fine, and up until March when the season got cancelled, then it got brought back. It was a weird season, right? This season's going to be the same. We're going to see extra postponements, right? It is worth mentioning postponements have happened in previous seasons. It probably feels worse this year because of everything that's going on, right? But I remember when I started playing, there's a game week where loads of matches got called off for snow, both before the deadline and after the deadline. And I think out of like 11 players, my start 11, I think I ended up playing like 2 players. Luckily, I captained Tevez. He played and he did score. But apart from that, outside of that, hardly any players played at all, right? So this isn't necessarily new in terms of postponements. But obviously with a pandemic like this, that is new, right? That doesn't usually happen. So one match being called off, probably not the end of the world, but it does feel like that if you've got players in your team. Right? I had Calvert-Lewin, but some people have got Cancelo, Diaz, De Bruyne, Sterling. Probably not too many extra Everton players, but it can hurt. And I've seen people wildcarding this week to get 15 double game week players, or at least 15 playing players, and they're not even able to field an 11, right? So even wildcarders have not had it that easy. So I think we have to kind of come to terms with the fact this season's not going to be normal like last year. There's possibly going to be more postponements as we go on, and we're just going to have to play what's in front of us, right? We can't think ahead. There's no point, for me, saving chips for something that might happen when we know right now what is going to happen. Now, the 2 screenshots I put on screen, obviously the Man City one and Everton got postponed. Now, it's going to be interesting what comes out of that, because Everton have asked for kind of transparency over how the decision was made, I believe, because Man City, few players out, exactly how many I'm not sure of, but then the game gets called off. But Sheffield United have some COVID positive tests, and they have to play their match. And now, apparently, Fulham have got some as well. And we're still, at the time of recording this, waiting to find out whether Spurs versus Fulham even happens in Game Week 16, right? So there's obviously maybe I don't know, like a filter that has to be hit or whatever it might be, where the match gets called off. And we're possibly not going to know that ahead of time. And sometimes we're going to find out after the deadline. There's not much you can do about that. Maybe one of the things that people have said is perhaps we shouldn't be tripling up on teams, right? Even though I say that after I've tripled up on Leeds and they've just absolutely smashed it against West Brom. But if you want to play it a little bit safer, maybe you don't triple up on teams. And one thing I'll almost certainly be trying not to do is captaining and vice-captaining the same fixture, right? There'll be a lot of people out there maybe with Kane captain, Son vice-captain in Game Week 16 against Fulham. And now, if that match gets called off, you've got no captain at all. Obviously, it could happen where you've got like De Bruyne captain and Kane vice-captain. And if the Spurs game gets called off as well, you're still screwed, right? That could happen. But I think to separate some kind of the risk, it's probably worth doing that. The other tweet that I've got up here is from Brian Swanson, who's a Sky Sports journalist. He's on TV, etc. I think he's one of their, I don't think he's the chief football writer or whatever, journalist for them, but he's right up there. Premier League say they are not discussing a circuit break. Circuit break is just a fancy way of saying like a pause or a lockdown or whatever, or stopping it basically. No club has brought this proposal to them. Clubs not expected to meet again until later this month. So we can talk about whether it should be stopped, whether it's good for health reasons, you know, whether it should be stopped, whether it's causing a lot of what's going on in the UK right now. But I don't want to get into that on this video, right? That's probably for a different video or a different style of podcast, etc. I don't think there's going to be a massive postponement to football. I think things would have to get really bad for that to happen again. The knock-on effects are huge, right? They're supposed to be playing the Euros this year. If you have to then start extending the Premier League, does the Euros get postponed? Does the Premier League get played after the Euros? They're going to do everything they can to finish the season. So for me, a long postponement of football for a month or 2 months just isn't likely to happen. I think things would have to get really bad, even with the positive tests, right? They've had positive tests earlier in the season. It's not like there's 50, 100, 200 people testing positive. So as it stands right now, and things could change, right? I'm not saying this forever. I don't see a postponement. There've been talk of bringing a 2-month or a 2-week cooling off period where they just stop football for 2 weeks and then carry on. But there's already teams that are going to have fixture pilots based on what's happening. So all we know right now is that the winter break's happening, game week 18 is going to be a blank, and game week 19 is going to be a double game week. Right now, we don't know anything further. So in terms of how this should change our strategy, I'm not sure it should until we get further news, right? This week, for sure, game week 17, you should not make transfers until you absolutely have to, right? Preferably you want to do it like a few minutes before the deadline because you want to get as much info as possible. If games are moved, that could really change your strategy, your transfer plans, your captaincy and stuff like that. You do not want to be making early transfers this week if you can help it, because obviously Man City game against Everton was postponed. Potentially their match versus City could be as well. At the time of recording, we don't know that, but that's obviously going to change your thinking going forward, because then that's another blank game for Chelsea and City, and maybe you want to get rid of some of their players ahead of blank game week 18 as well. So yeah, there is some talk about a 2-week cooling off period, but as Brian has said there, Brian Swanson, no club has brought that proposal to them, so whether or not that will change, we don't know. And it could mean that maybe game week 18 won't be a blank, or maybe game week 19 won't be a double. We just don't know, right? So right now, I think try and come to terms with the fact this season is weird, and some people are going to get more screwed than others, right? I potentially will still get 11 players out this week and hardly have to use any of my bench. That's very lucky. Some people have wildcarded and are going to get like 7, 8, 9 players out, right? It sucks, but that's how this season's going to be played. I think if that's something that's like really going to affect you and frustrate you, it's probably a good time to step away. But at the same time, there's not much going on in the world right now if we're in lockdown and stuff like that. So FPL is a nice break from that too. So it's kind of a weird situation where maybe it's time to step away for some people, but also it's really good for people to have something to occupy them and kind of keep up with their hobby. So the season's going to be weird. We play what's in front of us, right? Right now, we don't know if there's going to be any more postponements. Therefore, my strategy for 18 and 19 hasn't changed. But of course, if we get further news, then it might do. So try and get on with it, I suppose, and try and play along with it, right? It is what it is. And hopefully the Spurs versus Fulham game goes on tonight, because I know a lot of people have got players in that game. And hopefully there won't be too many more postponements. We're just going to have to keep track and keep changing our plans as we go. But for me right now, 18, 19, I'm not changing my strategy at all. So basically from here on out, I'm just going to assume that all the game weeks are going to go ahead as they are. All the games will be on. And obviously if they do change that, we'll reassess that as we go. But for now, game week 19 is a double game week. And I've seen some people worried about the amount of rotation that's happened over Christmas and then how much rotation there'll be in game week 19. Does that mean players won't play in both games? Obviously, if they don't play in both games, they haven't got a double game week, right? If Jamie Vardy only plays one of Southampton and Chelsea, that's not a double game week. That's just like any other week. So it's not as an advantage as it is for other players that will play twice, right? So certain teams, like I think one thing to say is, for all the talk about rotation over Christmas again, there hasn't really been that much, right? You can't take into account the games that have been called off. Like the fact that De Bruyne didn't play and Calvert-Lewin didn't play, that's just super unlucky. That's not due to rotation, right? We don't know what would have happened in those games. There would have been some rotation. Was talking about that already with Everton. But in general, there hasn't been a huge amount, right? Man United played. Okay, Martial was on the bench. Cavani played, but that can happen any game week, really. Rashford played. Fernandes played. Pogba played. Maguire played again. Wan-Bissaka, etc. Yes, okay, Jamie Vardy got rested. We saw that last year, though, so we kind of thought that might happen. And there is possibly a risk of him in the double game week because the games are still closer together, but he's got a long break before that as well. So that's not too much to worry about. So far, Balbuena, okay, they were rested as well, but Souček played. Right, for Liverpool tonight, there's rumours, I'm recording this before the Liverpool game plays, there's rumours that Robertson will get benched, which could happen. He's played 90 minutes pretty much every single game. But again, if Salah, Mane, Firmino play, there's not a huge amount of rotation to the players that we've got in our teams. Like Leeds didn't rotate at all, Villa barely rotated at all as well. So it wasn't as bad as we made out. And also, it's worth noting, there's only a couple of days rest at Christmas. Like some teams played on the 26th and then the 28th. If you look at the game week 19 rotation, so I picked out Liverpool and Man United specifically, just to show you that it's not probably as bad as some people are thinking. So Liverpool's schedule is Southampton away in the league on the 4th of January. 4 days later, they play the FA Cup. Potentially, they could rest some players there, but I think they're playing Villa, so it's a pretty difficult match. But even if they didn't rest players, they then have 9 days until their next game against Man United, and then 4 days until Burnley. So it's not like playing on the 17th against United and then the 19th against Burnley, which is basically what's happened for some teams over Christmas. They got a 4-day break, so I wouldn't be worrying. Same for Man United. 1st of January they play, right? So they've just played last night, and then they're going to play again on the 1st of January. So that's a few days rest. But then they got 5 days until the EFL Cup, another 3 days to the FA Cup. There could be some rotation there. And then they got another 8 days until they play in the league again. And then I think it's 3 days for their second game of the double game week. So the schedule shouldn't be too worrying. Like players like Vardy potentially are an issue because he's got like an ongoing injury, which is not really an injury because he's getting older. I think it's due to his age basically. Obviously the way he plays as well, very speedy player. He's having to take a bit more time for recovery, so games in quick succession are a problem. But like I said, he would have had a bit of a break before that, and then a couple of days in between as well for the games. So potentially he could play again. So in terms of game week 19 rotation, I would not let Christmas affect your decisions on players to play. We know Leeds are not going to rotate at all. Rafinha, Rodrigo, Bamford, Dallas, etc. They should all play, so they're not really a concern. Players like Che Adams, maybe, like Hasenhüttl said that perhaps the amount of games that he's played is catching up to him a little bit. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But there's time before game week 19, to get a break in. So the next match is probably more of a worry, game week 17. But again, most players and teams, I think, won't rotate that much. By game week 19, the winter break and stuff would have happened. Obviously, again, could be more postponements, but we'll worry about that as it happens. And once they've had that break, I'm sure the players will be fit and ready to go. And those that are playing twice in game week 19, the key players that we know are usually in those first 11s and very rarely get rotated, I wouldn't expect to see much rotation, to be honest. Okay, so let's talk about Leeds options. Now, I'm mostly talking about attack here. I'm going to come on to defenders a little bit in a minute when we talk about Charlie Taylor, replacements, basically. But for this, I'm going to talk about the attack. Now, I did kind of talk about on the wildcard video in Game Week 16 that I would look to triple up on Leeds attack if I was wildcarding. Now, obviously, that's gone now. People have used their wildcard. But basically, because they just create so many chances and they're such good value as well that you can afford to bench them in game weeks where there isn't a double game week, for example, and you're not using your bench boost. Trying to figure out which one to bench is going to be tricky. But for most people, right, they have Bamford already. And if you don't, you're probably looking at how to bring him in because his numbers are ridiculous. The amount of FPL returns he's got is crazy. And he's on penalties as well. And he's still a really good price. So for most people, it's Bamford +1 or even maybe +2. But obviously, if I'd wildcarded, I would have probably got rid of Dallas, and that would have been a mistake because he got 12 points. But in general, I would back the Leeds attack over the Leeds defence. Now, fixtures-wise, it is Spurs away in Game Week 17, so it's maybe not the most ideal time to bring them in. Leeds are probably going to have the majority of the possession in that game. Whether or not they can create enough chances without leaving themselves open is up for debate. I would say possibly not. But I can still see them scoring against Spurs. I'd find it, as a regular owner who's probably going to have to play him in Game Week 17, I'm not really expecting a clean sheet, to be completely honest. So it is going to be a tricky game for Spurs. Leeds will probably score. How many goals they score is the only worry, I guess, if you're doubling or tripling. But if it lets you enable a bigger move ahead of the double game week, I don't think it's a bad week. I don't think it's ever really a bad week to bring in Leeds players, to be honest. I think they'll be fine against Spurs. The only thing I would say for anyone that is looking to double or triple up, because last night you saw people, Bamford, he's only got an assist. Rafinha owners were complaining after 45 minutes that he hadn't scored because Leeds had scored 4, and he ends up getting on the score sheet. They are a team where they create a lot of chances from a lot of different positions, and a lot of players can be on the end of those chances to the point where even if they score 3 or 4 goals, it could be 3 or 4 different goal scorers. A bit like we've seen with Man City in previous seasons where, they might score 5 goals. It could be 5 different scorers. De Bruyne, Sterling, Aguero, Jesus, Bernardo Silva, David Silva, whoever it might be. Leeds are a little bit like that, where the points are quite spread. So they can be frustrating at times. You've got 2 players, 2 attackers. They score 3 goals. You've only got 1 attack and return between them. That's going to happen, but they do offer such good value. So who to go for, right? The numbers I got on the screen are XG and XA per 90 minutes. That's what I quite like looking at. It puts everyone on an even keel and kind of, is a bigger sample size because it's looking at the whole season. So They're ordered in XG. So Bamford's the highest, then Rodrigo, then Rafinha, then Harrison. But obviously you've got to take in expected assists to that as well, where Harrison's actually the best, then Rafinha, then Rodrigo, and then it's Bamford, right? So for me, a lot of people have got or should be looking to get Bamford, right? Yes, you could go Rodrigo and Rafinha or any combination of the other three and pick two, but Bamford's the key man, right? He's the number 9. He's not getting dropped anytime soon. He's the one I would have. Who you get after that is kind of interesting because Rodrigo's numbers in terms of goal threat are actually quite good, even though he's playing kind of behind the striker, almost like in a 4-1-4-1. His numbers are quite good, but we've seen in the last couple of games he does tend to get taken off a little bit early. Now, I think he got a couple of bonus points last night, or was in the bonus a little bit, so it wasn't so bad. But when you keep getting brought off early, that's something to maybe be concerned about. Whereas with Bamford, they're probably not going to take him off early in most games. Same with Rafinha. Like, he did come off eventually as well, but like the last game, he got more minutes than Rodrigo. And one thing to take into account, when you look at the XG and the XA combined, Rafinha's not too far behind Rodrigo. He's playing more minutes. He's on set pieces. And obviously he's a midfielder. So when they do keep a clean sheet, and I think they've kept 6 so far this season, he gets the extra point for that. And the extra point for the goal. So I'm on Rafinha and Bamford, so I'm maybe a little bit biased. I think Harrison is good, but he'd probably be my 4th choice out of these 4. I just think in terms, like, you want goals. Assists are great, don't get me wrong, that when you chip in with assists, especially if you get bonus, it's decent. But really what you want is the goals. And I think all the other 3 are just slightly better than Harrison, as shown with the numbers. And look, Harrison can get into goal scoring positions as he did yesterday. And if you've got him, I don't think I'd be looking to ship him. I'm not looking to swap Leeds players around. But if I was picking right now, it'd be Bamford and Rafinha. I think Rodrigo, if you need an extra forward, Harrison, if you need an extra midfielder, looks good. Whether or not you'd want to jump on their defence right now, I'm not too sure. Dallas is looking really good. Like, he's on 70 points, the same as Andrew Robertson before Liverpool played tonight, which is ridiculous. But if you've got other defenders that you want to put in, like Trent, Robertson, Chilwell, whoever it might be, then it's probably easier to slot in Leeds attackers for their price. So I think they're all looking good. I would not be worried about bringing them in against Spurs. The double game week's brilliant, by the way, because Brighton and Southampton will probably play against Leeds, and that kind of falls into Leeds' laps. Like, that's what you want. You want a team to play against them so they can counter-attack. And they do it ridiculously well. So Bamford decent. Rafinha would be the next pick for me. Probably Rodrigo, but I think him and Harrison are quite similar in terms of who's the best option. But if you've only got one, I do think a double up is good ahead of the double game week. And a triple up is not completely out of the question, especially if you don't already have a Leeds defender. Okay, for anyone that had Charlie Taylor, hugely frustrating because it looked like 2 guaranteed clean sheets against Sheffield United and Fulham. They've already got one against Sheffield United, apart from he came off around the 8th or the 9th minute. Now, it was a hamstring injury. How quickly he'll be back, I don't know yet. At the time of recording this, there's no diagnosis for exactly how long he'll be out for, but the chances of him playing that Fulham game seem pretty slim to me, considering the quick turnaround. Obviously, then he's a worry potentially for the double, but if not, the double game week for Burnley wasn't that great anyway, right? I think it's West Ham away and Liverpool away, so it wasn't ideal. On here, I've probably got the 5 kind of top-ish replacements around the same price, and I've got their fixtures for 17, 18, obviously. The reason I've picked these 5 is because they all play in a double game week, which is why I assume most people had Charlie Taylor. So you could put players like Stones and players like that in for game week 18. Obviously, bearing in mind that Man City might not play, we'll have to wait and see. But I'm going to assume most people had Charlie Taylor because he's got a double game week, which is why I've picked 5 replacements that also have a double game week, right, to choose from. So none of them really have the most ideal fixture this week for game week 17. So far plays Everton away. Bearing in mind, Everton will now have had a rest because they haven't had to play their game against Man City. They should have Rodriguez back. They should have Richarlison back. Obviously, Calvert-Lewin's been doing really well this year. So that's a tricky enough fixture for West Ham. And before last night playing Southampton, they hadn't kept a clean sheet in 6. Dallas, like I've just said, very attacking. But again, it's Tottenham away. Not necessarily the ideal fixture for a clean sheet. Lindelof is not even playing at the moment because of the back injury. And Bailly's done okay. Bailly's a defender as a Man United fan that I like. There's a lot to like about him. His speed next to Maguire is super handy. He likes to come out and play and take the ball out of defence, which is good. He's very erratic though, which is why I think when Lindelof is fit, he probably just comes back in. But he's obviously a worry because we don't know when he's going to be fit, when he's going to play, and how much that back will cause him problems going into the double game week. Justin looks good this week. Newcastle away, probably got the best fixture. We haven't seen Newcastle play Liverpool yet at the time of recording, but Leicester are a decent defence. And Justin's been playing really well recently as well. It's worth pointing that out. So I like him this week, but then in the double, it's Southampton at home, Chelsea at home, and then even Everton away after that. And the two fixtures after that, I believe, are Leeds and Fulham. So Leeds is not necessarily ideal when it comes to clean sheets either. So Justin kind of puts me off a little bit, and he's 5 million, so you've got to go up quite a bit in price. And then Bednarak, by the way, I've been bigging up Dallas quite a lot. Bednarak actually has more points than Dallas so far this season. He's on 72, only 5 behind Zuma, who's the highest scoring defender. But Liverpool, not ideal at all, right? Liverpool definitely scoring in that game. And even Leicester and Leeds in the double is not great. So for me, especially without Vestergaard, I'd probably ignore the Southampton defence. And that kind of, it doesn't really leave too many options, to be honest, because Justin I like for this week, but the double is not great. But it is Leicester who are a good defence. Bednarak I wouldn't be going near. Lindelof is frustrating because Villa at home, you could see a clean sheet potentially. Fulham away, Sheffield United at home, definitely good. And the fixtures after 20 are quite good for Man United. But I would just be worried about that back. So it only really leaves Sofal and Dallas. And they've both got quite good fixtures afterwards. I just think because of the attacking potential, I'd probably slightly lean towards Dallas. But from a defensive point of view, I'd definitely go towards Sofal. Burnley at home and West Brom at home are really good. And Crystal Palace away is decent enough afterwards. So for me, as much as I love Dallas, I do think for the double game week period and just afterwards, Sofal is probably slightly better. But I cannot knock what Dallas has done. Like when he's not playing fullback, he's playing in midfield. He's always getting forward. Even last night, up until like the 88th, 89th minute, he's still coming forward trying to get those attacking returns. And bearing in mind, these are all players that are cheap enough, pretty much anyway, maybe not Justin, but the rest of them, where you can bench them in their tricky fixtures. I think that's something people forget about, like Leeds, for example. Yes, they get absolutely tanked by big teams like Man United, right? They concede 6, but you can bench them in those fixtures. They're cheap enough. So if I had to pick between Sofal and Dallas, I'm quite biased towards Dallas because I've owned him for so long now and I love the guy. But I do think Sofal for 19 and 20 in particular is probably slightly better. He is attacking as well. We should say that, right? Maybe not as attacking as Dallas, but he is still attacking himself, especially from an assist point of view. And clean sheet-wise, Burnley at home, West Brom at home, it does not get better than that. So for the double and Game Week 20, I prefer Sofal. Long-term, though, I don't know. I'd probably still side with Dallas. Let me know in the comments below if you're a Charlie Taylor owner, who are you replacing him with? Let's talk about Man United for just a sec. Actually been doing okay recently, up to second in the league. Scoring quite a few goals, not against Man City or Wolves, but obviously they are tricky defences to go against. But in general, looking to attack, right? Say what you want about Solskjaer. He doesn't want to necessarily sit back and counter all the time. Obviously, there is an element of counter-attacking to Man United, but we are trying to go on the front foot. And we do score quite a few goals. We have done so far this season. Look, everyone's got Bruno Fernandes. I don't need to talk about him. The conversations that I'm seeing in the community is who to add to that, right? Should we be adding Rashford and Martial? Obviously, for some people, that's going to be Son to Rashford. Some people, it's going to be Kane to Martial, whoever it might be, right? And the double game is quite good for Man United. Liverpool is tricky, but then it's Fulham. And like I said for Lindelof just a minute ago, then it's Sheffield United afterwards. So it's not the worst time to be bringing in Man United players. And Aston Villa in particular, decent defence, but I think Man United will get chances there. So if I had Son versus Leeds, I wouldn't switch to Rashford before the double game week. I think Son versus Leeds is a really good fixture and probably no worse than Rashford against Villa. So I don't know if I would make the transfer unless I had a transfer to burn and I really wanted Rashford for the double game week. So I wouldn't necessarily make the move this week, but I don't think it's the worst, right? These are over the last 4 weeks. It's worth saying that Martial has played less minutes. So to have the same amount of shots in the box and more chances created and better expected goals, it's decent from Martial. The problem is he's had less minutes because there are more concerns for me over rotation with him. I don't really have those concerns with Rashford. Any of the players could be rested at any point, right? It could be Greenwood, Cavani, Martial, front three. It's very rare that Rashford and Bruno Fernandes in particular get left out though, right? And I think with the amount of rest periods there are now, I don't see it. Not in the league anyway. So I think Rashford keeps playing. Martial can play left with Rashford right and Cavani through the middle. We've seen that before. I think we did that against Southampton. So he's not going to get rested too many times. I do think he's still the number 9 that's going to play most games. And when he plays, he's really good. but just that little worry about rotation would put me off him. If people are looking at going for Rashford, I don't really see a reason not to, right? Double game week, yes, it's against Liverpool, but they're going to come out and play. Man United can try and counter them. He's going to get chances in that game, you'd imagine. He done really well before up against Trent Alexander-Arnold as well. I'm sure that's a side that we're going to target. Whether or not we get any luck down there, who knows, right? And Liverpool's always a tough game. But Rashford's got Villa, double game week, Sheffield United at home the week after, who we did really well against in the reverse fixture already this season. Underlying stats are decent, like 1.7 expected goals over 4 game weeks is pretty good. Not creating too many chances, but if you've got a player that's getting goals from midfield, then that's where the points are coming from. So I think either of these options are good. I just think for a lot of managers, you bring in Martial, you've got the potential to be frustrated because of starts. With Rashford, not so much. And so, if people are looking to do Son to Rashford for the double, I don't see a huge problem with that. Spurs fixtures after the double are not great, and they also don't have a double in 19, although they are playing Sheffield United. We'll see what Son does against Fulham, if it's on, and then we'll see what he does against Leeds. But I think that's a nice switch. And I said that on the wildcard, right? Players like Mane and Rashford, they're going to be difficult for non-wildcarders to get to while they're also planning for game week 18 and 19. These are the kind of luxury moves that wildcarders could have done, and maybe still people can do if they switch on to Rashford. So I think it's a nice move for the double. You get an extra game and good fixtures afterwards. So Rashford, the one for me. Probably not Martial, but he could be worth a punt. When he's playing, his underlying numbers are decent. So I just want to touch on a few other things before we finish that people have either asked me or that I've noticed, and it's worth kind of talking about but not doing a whole section on it, right? So Arsenal players first. A lot of people ask me whether to bring them in. They got good fixtures. Obviously, they don't blank in game week 18 either. It's West Brom this week, and I think it's Crystal Palace in the blank. And they do play in 19 as well, of course. So it's not the worst time to bring them in, right? Playing West Brom is good. And if you've got a strategy where you're not free hitting, they do play in game week 18 as well. I'm still not fully sold, to be completely honest, right? Yes, they got the win against Brighton 1-0. They beat Chelsea 3-1. And they played well in that match, right? I'm not trying to take anything away from them. A penalty, though, a long-range free kick, and then I think Saka's was like a cross-come shot, and yeah, it just lobbed the keepers. So 3-1, I think maybe. I don't want to be unfair to Arsenal, right? I don't have this agenda against Arsenal at all, but a 3-1 win against Chelsea out of the blue, and then they only just beat Brighton 1-0. I don't think it's necessary time to massively jump on Arsenal players, right? I'll just say that straight away. Will I punt on Aubameyang or someone like that in the blank game week? Absolutely, probably, yeah, on the free hit. Maybe Saka. The thing with Saka is we've got to wait now to see if he's injured. And for me, there's just so much rotation potential in that attacking lineup. Who do you even go for? Like Martinelli, can he stay fit? What will his minutes be like? Will he keep starting? Aubameyang's probably the one, but he's so expensive. Like even now he's back and he's got good fixtures. He is so expensive when you're trying to fit in Salah, Fernandes, Son, Kane, Martial, Rashford, whoever it might be, who all have double game weeks. So sometimes in FPL, you're not bringing players in because you think they're bad or because they've got bad fixtures. It's just the scenario that's happened at the time. And right now there's a blank and a double game week to plan for, which is why I'm not looking at Arsenal players at all. If you're going for a non-free hit in 18, then maybe a defender could be good. Rob Holding, someone like that. Bellerin, potentially. But there's lots of other good defenders out there right now as well. So have Arsenal turned a corner? I want to see a few more games to completely know that. Like they played Brighton. Brighton, I don't know, flattered to deceive sometimes, both in defence and attack. I feel like they're quite a good defensive team, quite a good attacking team, but sometimes it just doesn't work out like that. So, really good result against Chelsea, don't get me wrong, right? It really was 3-1, and to back that up with another win against Brighton is decent. I'm sure morale is a bit higher, confidence is a bit higher within the management and the team, and they've got good fixtures. So, you know me, I'm a fixtures person. If you want to punt on a team for the decent fixtures, Arsenal are the way to go right now. But if you're planning to play your free hit in 18, I wouldn't jump on for West Brom to then have that player for game week 19 when there's better double game week players out there. So that's my opinion on Arsenal players. Nothing against them. 2 good results. Not for me right now, though. Maybe on free hit 18. Antonio's fit. I had to mention it, right? He's come off the bench last night. Potentially now going to play. I think it's Everton away, isn't it, for West Ham? Then a double game week. I love the guy, right? I really do. As you know, I mention him in every freaking video. And if he stays fit, he's great, right? He's going to be one of the best cheap strikers out there, even better than Calvert-Lewin for me. The problem is, can he stay fit? We don't have much time till game week 19. Would I rush to buy him this week? Probably not, unless I had a spare transfer, which I absolutely had nothing else to use it on. I think it's better to roll the transfer, see if he gets through Game Week 17 first, and then reassess towards Game Week 19. I wouldn't be looking to necessarily triple captain him or captain him in the double, but if he plays against Burnley and West Brom, there's potential for big numbers for a very little price. And if you've already wildcarded, and you've got maybe, because some of us who haven't wildcarded, we're using all our transfers to build for 19 or the bench boost or whatever. If you wildcarded, you've got the luxury of rolling transfers a bit more. And then if you've got like a Chris Wood in there, for example, and Antonio is fit ahead of Game Week 19, well, I would definitely do that switch, right? Yes, okay, there's a chance he goes off in the first game, misses the second one, plays 60 to 70 minutes rather than 90. But Chris Wood against West Ham and Liverpool is definitely worse than Antonio against Burnley and West Brom. So potential now he's fit to go there. But I'm not going to do it just yet. Let's wait and see what happens when we get to Game Week 19 for me. And then Wolves' defence, I just wanted to quickly mention this. They seem to have moved back to a back three, and they've looked pretty good. They really caused Man United a lot of problems. They were hard to break through, and that's definitely worth taking a look at, right? Seiss is playing, massive goal threat from set pieces. He's only 5 million. He's back down to 5 million now. So when their fixtures get good, definitely worth considering. For the free hit as well, potentially, if you think the Wolves are going to beat Everton, they're definitely going to make it hard for Calvert-Lewin and co to get through them. And obviously, Kilman has been playing as well. We'll have to monitor Bolly's injury status, but it's worth considering because when they move to a back four, they become a bit of an unknown. But in that back five, or with the three centre-backs, we know what they're all about and how good they can be defensively. And perhaps that's what Nuno's going to have to do until they can buy a striker and maybe try and, I don't know, transform the team even more. But it's worth noting they have gone back in the last few games to a back three. And if that continues, we should probably start looking at Wolves' defence again once the fixtures are good. So that's it for this one. Thanks very much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, please do give it a like and hit that subscribe button as well if you're new around here. Obviously, there could be further news about postponements and stuff as we go throughout this week and obviously throughout January as well. So I'll keep updating that as I do future videos. So this is going out on Wednesday afternoon. I'll be streaming on Wednesday evening around 10 o'clock once the last game is finished, the Liverpool-Newcastle game. So watch out for that. I'll have team selection tomorrow. I'll have captaincy on Friday as well as a deadline stream as well. So there's plenty of time to talk about any further changes. But what I've got in this video is what I knew at the time. So leave me down a comment below if you disagree with anything or agree with anything in this video. Let me know what your opinion is. And obviously, if you've got any further questions as well. And lastly, I'll just shout out to Patreon, patreon.com/letstalkfpl. If you've not already signed up for that, I do have a link in the description below if you want to support me and the channel a bit further. Get some perks along the way, team reveals, extra Q&A, Slack access, WhatsApp access, all that good stuff over there as well. So I'll just do a shout out to everyone who's on the Legends Wall already. So this is everybody that's already signed up. Much appreciated to all of you. I'm now on the 5th wall as well now. So many people have signed up, so really appreciate the support. And big shout out to Victor B and Jurgen K. I wonder if that's the actual Jurgen K who has signed up since the last stream/video. So I'll leave it there. Hit the like button, hit subscribe. I'm back tomorrow with more videos and a stream tonight. I'll see you then.